special guest with us. This is the part where we do the interview. We brought in our good friend Jay Tholen. Jay has been a part of the IndieNomicon community here with us in IndieNomicon since the first year of IndieNomicon. You were at our first expo.
Yes.
That was in that tiny, tiny room that
yes.
we should not have had 400 people in.
Yeah, that was weird.
So, Jay, tell us a little bit about yourself. Obviously, I know all about all your stuff, but tell our listeners at home.
So, hi, I'm Jay. I grew up here in Central Florida, a little bit, never eat soggy waffles, southwest of Orlando, in the boonies in the country. And I did games as a hobby until 2013 when you had that first expo, really. Yeah. So it was because of IndieNomicon that now I can make video games. No, we can say that. No, but so I made a game called Dropsy, or started working on a game, and I did a Kickstarter then, and it got picked up by some press, and a publisher hit me up, and then I have been able to sort of do it as a job since then. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about Dropsy.
Yeah, Dropsy is that adventure game, and it's about a clown who is a little bit spooky looking if you just look at his outside appearance, but he has a heart of gold. So you play as Dropsy, and folks in the town that you're in run away from you, and you have to kind of earn their trust by helping them all. And
it's kind of like a reverse It.
Yeah, it's like a reverse
a funny-looking clown that was a really creepy, scary dude, and Dropsy is he's a scary-looking clown that's actually a sweet guy. At home. I was just watching a review on It before I came in.
Okay. This whole thing is going to just have It references?
No. But yeah, Dropsy is a really cool game, and I actually have a very interesting story because I was at GDC one year, and this was after Dropsy had been released. And so I'm at a party for GitHub that one of our fellow indies, Nick, was like, hey, we got to go to this party. So I'm doing my networking thing, like hanging out with my friends and taking turns just like sitting at random tables talking to people. And I'm talking to these students, and who should sit down next to me but Odin Shannon. And he's like, hey guys, how's it going? Tell us, he's like, what are you up to? And, I told him about IndieNomicon and how we're an indie organization out of Orlando. And he's like not telling us who he is, but I totally know who he is.
Yeah, right.
And so he's like, yeah, I'm Odin Shannon. I've been close to GDC parties. I worked some indie games. And I'm like, yeah, I know who you are.
Yeah.
And then he's like, so tell me a little bit about IndieNomicon. Do you have any adventure games? Because Odin's a big adventure game guy. Yeah. And I'm like, well, we got this one guy. He makes this game, Dropsy, about this clown. And he stops me right there. And he's like, do you mean Jay Tholen? And I'm like, yeah, Jay's one of our indies. He's a cool guy. So we had a little conversation right there about Dropsy with, Odin Shannon. Yeah, it was pretty cool.
He was pretty instrumental in getting people to back the Kickstarter. Because I think a lot of adventure game fans follow him, and he's in that community, which I haven't really wasn't a part of, so it was cool. It was real nice of him. But yeah, he's a pretty cool dude.
So, yeah, I thought that was pretty cool because I'm like, one of our indies. This famous guy knows him. So what are you up to now?
So now, after Dropsy, I was able to move out of my dad's house before 30. Woo!
Yeah.
And I got married first, and then I moved out of my dad's house. And I live in Germany now, and with my wife. And I've just been working on another game called Hypnospace Outlaw.
Okay, cool.
And it's a alternate reality operating system simulator where you play as a sort of a crappy moderator on like this weird fake internet. So you just do low paying like moderation work, like really stupid stuff like content infringement violations, and you look for other stuff like that.
Well, when you're ready, we're going to want you to come out here and present.
I will. I'd like to do that. And I'm also working on, started a thing called Video Game Look Club.
Yes, we brought you down specifically to talk about the Video Game Look Club. So tell us a little bit about that.
That is a sort of an internet book club for video games, indie games. And so what I do, and it's not formal at all. You just either use a hashtag on Twitter or Facebook, or you pop in the Discord chat room to talk about that month's game.
Oh, cool! You have a Discord chat.
Yeah, that's the most active thing in it is the Discord, where people and a little community formed, and it's pretty cool. But so basically, what I do is I look each month for a game, usually on itch.io or Game Jolt, and I try to search social media mentions on Facebook or Twitter and see the games that I think are the best but have the fewest social media mentions. Like maybe they just don't know to, engage with social media or whatever. And so the first month was this game called Rex Another Island, and the dude had only 18 people were following him on Twitter, and he didn't really have much of a presence at all on there. And it's kind of cool because I think he, from the way his page presentation and everything was, it was very nice, like a lot of detail put in. So I think he obviously wanted it to be, some people just throw games up there as a hobby thing, and then okay, next one. They don't want necessarily a lot of people to play their game or something. But I think he did, and so I talked to a few guys who are more experienced than I am at like marketing smaller level games, and I kind of condensed like maybe the easiest, best way to share a game or get it out there on social media, which is like including a GIF in your post. Sorry, I hard G GIF if that offends anybody. And including a link to the game and a few other just things you must do, when you're sharing. You want people to retweet this thing and get people to see it or share a thing. And so for that game, they got a buttload of retweets because it just is a very attractive little game. And a publisher actually saw that and picked up that game, so it was pretty cool. First month.
So that was interesting. One thing you mentioned is a lot of people like just kind of make games as like a hobby sometimes, and we're here trying to actually make a living off of it, but not everybody does. Some people just like to make cute little games in their spare time, and there's nothing wrong with that. And Itch is full of stuff like that.
Yeah,
well as a lot of games that we upload every time we have a game jam.
Yeah, a lot. That's one thing when I was looking for games to feature in Look Club, like. I had to make sure that a lot of times I'd be real excited for one, and it would be very polished because I think maybe the team was mostly artists. And then I realized, this lasts about 0.02 seconds, and then, of course I wouldn't want to choose that for a monthly game club because you couldn't play it for any length of time. But I do like, though, I think it's a mistake that I sometimes have where I will think everyone wants to do this for a job or make it big in the game thing, and I think for some people, I've even thought it would be preferable to just work somewhere else so it doesn't become work. This is your fun hobby. You don't want to also. You don't want to do it for work, and then when you get home, you're sick of it. So
it's my cousin. He loves to work on cars, but he doesn't want to work on cars for a living.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't want it to become a job.
Yeah.
And so for some people, they just want to make little fun games in Twine or RPG Maker. They don't want to go full bore Unreal, 3D graphics. They just kind of make a fun little thing, and that's totally cool. And honestly, a lot of creativity can come from that. And you might catch someone's eye who's like, hey, can I expand on this idea? Or, they might want to actually work on the game. But if you don't want to continue working on it as a professional project, move the creativity forward is what I say.
Yeah, that's cool.
So yeah, and do you have any links or anything that we can share for the Game Dev Club so we can kind of get it out there a little bit?
Yeah, so vglook.club is the URL, and every month. This month I need to put a page up there, but this month it's on hiatus because I'm in the U.S. and I can't really
VGLook.gov?
.club,
Club,
VGLook.club, because
Okay.
it's Video Game Look Club. Yes, we are now part of the government.
I don't know why I heard Gov.
Nah,
but
it's cool. And hashtag VG Look Club is what people use on social media, but and the Twitter is VG Look Club. But yeah, that's pretty much it for that. Links for that. But
yeah, and we'll see if we can find your Discord link as well when we do a social
yeah,
media
it's like
post about it.
XP12.
Yeah,
I don't know
the
what it is,
Discord
something
link
like
is
this.
nothing that anybody's going to remember. We're going to have to
Yeah.
actually link it.
No, I know. Yeah.
So yeah, you were telling us about your other game, because one of the things I was going to ask is what you think the future of. I don't remember the name of your studio. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's Tinder Shoot, but it's not even real.
Right,
I just put it in front of the games. I've done no official anything with it.
So yeah, what's the future for Tinder Shoot?
So we'll Hypnospace Outlaw.
Yeah.
Right now, looking for a publisher. I guess we're a little farther than looking. Like we're currently deciding, like, I guess who we might want to go with. It's not like they're all chomping at the bit or something, but
it's got to be a lot easier
Yeah.
than last time. Now that you have a moderately successful title under your
I
belt.
think it's certainly easier than it would have been had I not released the game with a publisher. Definitely, yeah. But it's very. There's so many cool games that it's.
Yep, the indie market is definitely full of cool games that a lot of people never see.
Yeah, and it's much harder to get a publisher than I had assumed. Like, because I figured, oh yeah, this will be a piece of cake. I've already finished the game. That'll be real attractive. But it's
That's
quite
still gonna be tough.
still very difficult. But yeah.
So did you want to talk anything about your process for how you approach making a game?
Sure. Anything specific or not
Just kind of anything you want to talk about, like how you, like advice for aspiring game developers if they want to sit down and make their own game. What's a good way to go about it?
Well, I think if you're just beginning, just make something, just like don't try to make a big thing necessarily. Just finish a thing,
Don't start out with your 400-hour
Yeah.
RPG.
I mean, I do know a guy who kind of is doing that. His name is Alonso Martin, and he's been working on this game for almost a little over 12 years now, called Heartforth Alicia.
Yeah.
I knew him back in the click and play community, back in the early 2000s, like 2001 or 2000, and he's still working on it. And he's got it published now. It's not quite out yet, but anyway. Sorry.
But we advise starting out with something small.
Yes. And don't worry about the tools. Just use whatever the heck you want.
At that point, just get some experience.
Yeah, just do a thing. Because even using those middleware or even really super beginner tools, because there's even another level of like game engine now that's easier than Game Maker or Construct. Just like. But even with those, you're still learning how to edit images to get them how they should be, to use them as sprites or whatever. You're learning stuff, Yeah. So even if you need, I think there's a tendency to want to jump in and be recognized immediately or something. And
you just gotta start out by building yourself up first.
Yeah.
And so starting to kind of figure out what you're gonna do, and we've all made that mistake. I've tried to jump in straight out of college and be like, all right, I have a degree, let's make a game.
Yeah.
And then it just all falls apart.
Yeah.
Game jams are also great for getting experience. Jay's come to several of our game jams.
Yeah, they are really. I have to say, if you are listening to this and you're in or around Orlando, you really need to come to some of these events, because it's the most welcoming game community thing I've been around, and I've been to a few different cities ones just because I was around and I wanted to go, and there's this lack here of this feeling of this social hierarchy. You have to. It's just people are real friendly, and it's not like, oh, there's the cool guys over there or something. People just hang out and everyone talks to each other. It's nice.
Yep, and we got guys like Jay or Keith, who we had on our last interview, who just Keith's got his own studio, and I mean, the dude worked at Weta for years,
wow, yeah.
And so he's here making indie games now, and he's just super friendly. He just wants to chat with people, see what games they're working on. So it's a really open community. I'm very glad that we've kind of built that up and that people like you can enjoy it.
Yeah, true. I wish I lived here still. Maybe I'll live here again.
So, are there any upcoming events you're excited for?
Well, there is Fantastic Arcade, which is in Austin, Texas.
Okay.
And I'm going to that in a week. I'm flying to Austin because they're gonna show. I'm gonna show Hypnospace there. It's probably not ready to show, so I'm gonna band-aid a version that won't break and is kind of safe for people to mess around with. But yeah, it'll be really interesting, I guess. So yeah, that's a really cool, very intimate sort of game festival over there, and they have it in a theater, in a movie theater. That's cool. So, and it's one of these theaters. It's the Alamo, where they have these wood sort of tables, and they serve food, while you're watching movies. Yeah. And so all of the talks are in this too, and you can order food while watching these game developer talks, and eat a big hamburger while watching someone talk. Like Tim Schafer came a few years ago and was talking about Grim Fandango and some of the behind the scenes stuff, and it was just such a nice thing to like be munching on a burger, watching all this stuff that you're interested in. And they have the game tournaments in the same area, so I love that. It's a real chilled out, relaxed thing. And Elijah would come sometimes. Cool. I didn't talk to him though. I was too shy. My wife talked to him.
Chad and I actually met Tim Schafer 2 years ago at GDC, I think.
Yep. Yeah. Totally, like, it was crazy. It was just like we walked up and I'm like, dude, that's Tim Schafer.
Hey, we were going down the escalator. And
I was too shy to talk to him too. This year, if I see people I know of, I'm going to try to talk to them. But I gave him an awkward wave, and that was my interaction with Tim. So.
Yeah, he does a lot of stuff. I've actually met him 3 times, all at GDC. The last time was the time with Chad where we both got high fives. Nice. But I was also at the Innovative Games Summit where they do like the cool controllers, different controllers. The thing that Theory did where he Control Alt Delete, where he made the pug butt. Sniffing pugs. Yeah. And so they were showing off all their games, and they were passing around donuts while we were all like getting up to look at the games. And the guy in front of me turns around to give me the box of donuts, and it's Tim Schafer.
That's cool.
So he seems pretty nice. The couple times I've met him.
If you didn't know, Tim Schafer made a lot of very famous adventure games.
Yes.
And Psychonauts.
Double Fine, Psychonauts. Yeah. Brutal Legend's my favorite.
I do like it. Is underappreciated, I think. Yeah. And I really didn't mind the real-time strategy parts of it myself. I thought they were cool. Anyway,
I think that's all we got. Thank you for coming out to be a part of the Replaycast.
We do have questions from the social media side.
We have questions from social media?
Really?
So, yeah, we have some social media. So if you want to future participate in future interviews, you can at the Replaycast through Facebook and our Twitter. But we actually had 3 come in that wanted to ask it. So kind of get your input on this. What are some best practices about getting in front of publishers or getting that visualness from your perspective as an indie? So it's like,
that's a good one.
As going to be able to do that.
Like getting a publisher to actually look at your junk kind of thing? Or you mean when you actually present to them? Or like what do you...
Both, because that's almost like the 2 sides of the coin.
Yeah.
Both would be better.
So God, like I have to say, and it sucks to say this, but I was just very fortunate when Dropsy's Kickstarter came out, because I had read an interview weeks before the Kickstarter for Dropsy came out, and with Devolver, who published it, and they were like, oh, right now we're looking for an adventure game, and I didn't know that at the time, and then Rock Paper Shotgun, out of the hundreds of emails I sent, Rock Paper Shotgun was one of the few to actually run something on the game, and then Devolver happened to see that, and then they emailed me because it looked like their aesthetic anyway, the game, but I guess now it's changed a little bit, because I think they're doing less hunting, and just maybe they'll see some animated GIF on Twitter, and then contact them. I may be wrong about this, but I know it's happened at least to 2 or 3 games. One is a game called My Friend Pedro or something like that. I think they saw animated GIF on Twitter and contacted them. And then Piku Niku or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how, and maybe Downwell also was like that. So it happens surprisingly often where someone will share an animated GIF and then get a lot of shares or retweets, and they'll be contacted. But I think in terms of you getting a publisher's eye, it's always the best to go to a PAX or a GDC or somewhere where you know this publisher is, and go to their desk or a person who is working for them and say, hey, can I set up a meeting with whoever I would show a pitch to here? And they usually will give you a meeting even if maybe they're not looking for a game at the time or whatever, but at least you'll have their eye and their full attention. Because for the game I'm currently working on, I sent quite a few. I mean, this might reflect bad on me, but to say I was ignored a lot, but my game was ignored a lot. But I sent quite a few emails, and maybe it was
common.
Yeah, and maybe it wasn't the quality of the game even. Maybe they're just so inundated with emails that they just don't click on half of these pitch emails or something.
Yeah.
So, but some of these same publishers who I sent like multiple emails to when I went to Gamescom, I made meetings with them. Like I went up and said, "Hey, is there a way I can talk to someone?" And they were interested after I did the pitch, but so evidently they didn't see my emails. So I would say if you send emails to these guys and no one replies,
don't get discouraged.
Yeah, go. It's probably they never even opened it. So
Yeah.
maybe go try to physically talk to them, even if you don't have a booth. It's so worth it, I think, to just go and meet them at a convention or just somewhere.
Honestly, Valve is insanely receptive. That's a company that I wouldn't expect to be, but I've just walked into their booth twice and been like, "Hey, I'm a game developer working on an indie game. Is there anybody who would like to talk to me about my game?" And they're like, "Yeah, sure."
That's cool. Yeah, I would, if I was at a convention, I would walk straight past that because their image they have,
Yeah.
you'd think they wouldn't talk to you. So
Valve is insanely cool.
Yeah, but there's a lot of newer publishers that are also starting to look for games, and a lot of them are run from people who had previously worked at pretty successful indie publishers.
Yep, I know of one that has recently started up in North Carolina that I can't get into the details, but yeah, there are a lot of new publishers starting up this year.
I wouldn't discount those either, because I think as long as someone running it has a history with something maybe you've heard of at least.
Yeah. Actually, I've worked with 80% of the people running that studio, so
so you know they're good for it.
Yeah.
I guess that's another thing. There's some I won't name them, but there's some publishers who will hit you up online, and if you look at their roster of games, they have 100 games. And if you look at Steam, each of them have 15 to 20 reviews. And obviously they're just taking on games and not putting a whole lot of effort into them other than slapping them on Steam. And then they're also getting whatever 30% of your revenue. So even though you're getting a deal, I think you might be better on with your
You got to make sure that your publisher's actually going to give you the service.
Do the publishing or get the word out on it, because I think that's the most important.
So I forget what it was. The RPG that was showing at the last IndieNomicon, Iron. Do you remember, Chad? Iron something.
Here in town?
Yeah, the last
Iron Galaxy?
Iron Galaxy. No, not the name. The name of their game. Iron Galaxy is a studio.
Oh, the one that just presented?
Yeah.
I don't remember. Iron Forge, maybe?
Yeah.
Something around that?
We'll have to. Oh, we're terrible.
Edit this out.
But they were saying they did. There's on Twitter, or it's either Twitter or Instagram. There's a daily developer screenshot thing.
Yeah.
And apparently the community with that is super involved, and they're just take a screenshot of your game every day and put it up on this hashtag daily developer thing. And apparently there's a big community.
I need to look that up. Yeah.
It's a Saturday only.
Oh, it's a Saturday only.
It's Screenshot Saturday.
Screenshot Saturday.
Oh, Screenshot Saturday. Yeah.
Okay.
I've done that a few times. Yeah.
Apparently, that has a really good community, and it's.
I need to do that more.
So yeah, Screenshot Saturday, guys.
Yeah. I guess generally don't be afraid of annoying the crap out of your followers, especially if your account on social media is specifically for game stuff. Like,
I am terrible
just
at social
post
media.
your stuff and
Yeah.
don't worry about bugging people, because too bad.
Yeah, well, the worst is actually for your community to feel like you're not a thing.
Yeah.
Right? So if your community doesn't have confidence in you,
Yeah.
then if you're not posting, then they don't have confidence in you, and they're not going to buy your game. So you want to make sure that they believe that you're going to finish a game.
Yeah, right.
Cool. The next question that we had through social media was, now that you're in Germany, what is your perception on Orlando indie development versus Germany indie development?
Well, I'm in Germany. I'm in a city called Münster, and that is 2 hours north of, and Germans would not say hours, they would say kilometers, but whatever, 2 hours north of Cologne and Dusseldorf. And I'm also about a little over 2 hours east of Amsterdam. But in Münster itself, it's mostly universities for medical students or law students, or not a lot of tech stuff going on. There's some business. But so I really, because I sit in my room all day and work there, other than when I have to go to the grocery store, I haven't interacted with many people. But I will say, when I have visited, there's a meetup in Cologne, sort of for the state that I live in there, and they seem to they make me think of IndieNomicon, actually, both in how relaxed and welcoming they are, and in the numbers that they pull, or the people that attend, and so it's definitely smaller. There's less of a cultural appreciation for games. They're seen more as kids things over there, or time wasting things. I think this is a small tangent, but I think a lot of this has to do with back in the 70s and 80s. Arcade games there were classified as gambling. You had to have a gambling license as a business to have an video arcade machine in your establishment until arcades were already dead, pretty much.
We had that problem with pinball here in the States.
Yeah. I think it's very similar. And so there were no Pac-Man. There was nothing. There's exactly one, as far as I know, and this could be wrong. I read this somewhere on the internet. There's one arcade in Germany, and I went to it, and it's in Cologne, one video arcade, and there's like 5 machines there. And so, but I say this to say, older generations don't have this warm nostalgia for it at all. And so game consoles are more seen as, I think, toys, partially as a result of that. And there's the stereotype of also like the hardcore gamers who just aren't productive members of society thing.
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely had that here
Yeah.
as well. I think it's gotten better over the last, let's say, 5 to 10 years. But I remember there was definitely a point where it was like, video games, that's kids, and like,
yeah,
older
especially
generations
professionally
still have
too.
that.
Professionally, if you're around tech folk, there's often this video games, they don't take you so seriously, but it's improving. Merkel visited Gamescom, which was a huge deal for the industry last year.
Yeah, that is huge.
So, and she played Farming Simulator maybe on Switch or something briefly, but so it's getting better. But in terms of the temperament to video games, I think that sort of makes it a little more difficult to be taken seriously.
Yeah.
Because I went to visit. I mentioned this to one of you earlier, but I went to visit a co-working space near me. And it just seemed very cold, and well, I emailed them first and I didn't get a reply, so I was like, well, I'll go ride my bike out there, and just I wasn't there very long. It just felt like video game people were not welcome in this co-working space, and it was techie types. But
so guys, what Jay is talking about is we're actually at the Orlando Game Space. We just gave him a tour of the new facility. We're still under construction a little bit here, doing some renovations, but we were showing him, we're trying to make a community co-working space where people feel welcome to be, nerdy game developers. And so just like IndieNomicon, we want a sense of community to come with the space. So, yeah.
But I really lost the original question, didn't I? But yeah, it's getting better. But I think I would, in terms of just this world, I would prefer to be here.
Well, we do appreciate it when you come back to visit us. Always, we love to see you at IndieNomicon and any of the stuff that we do.
I like to see you guys too.
Cool.
And then one last final question is, so what would you like to see in Orlando from our community and our game development scene? We're focusing on the restructure of IndieNomicon, the future voice of pushing that out. We just got done talking about the Orlando Game Space and the building out of that. I mean, what else would you care to see from someone who has now more of an outside perspective?
Gee, that's a tough one. I don't know. I think you guys already are like really. I think in general, I wish there was more accessibility for people maybe who aren't acquainted with this world or something. It can seem pretty exclusive, and like I think that this place has a very warm vibe to it. So I think you are already doing that. But yeah, I don't know. Just that, maybe you're already planning like classes or things for younger folk. So I think that would be really cool to get them, because I think it's real important. I mean, if I came to something like this when I was in high school or middle school, like that would have changed probably my life. Like I would have been more set on a course to do something like this, because I could have seen myself in a place like this doing this, seeing people actually making money on this. Because, kids hear their parents' advice or their relatives' advice or their teacher's advice about what a viable career for them is or whatever when they're out of high school. And then they really tend, I think, and most of the time that advice is from a place where this kind of thing is invisible to them.
Well, we get a lot. Well, my kid likes to play games. Maybe they'll like to make games. And so one of the things that's a little bit harsh is it is kind of better to disillusion the people earlier, where they're like, look, making games and playing games is not the same thing. And we do, so we do have some kids who, actually our last game jam, we had a group of 13-year-olds come.
Whoa. And
they actually sat next to me, and they made their own little video game with us at the game jam.
That is cool.
There are people who know that and are interested. We also, Marco Flores is one of our people who started attending the first game jams. He was the guy.
He's not a kid anymore.
He's not a kid anymore, but he was a kid. He was 14 at the first game jam, and we didn't know until...
He was on my team.
Was he?
Yeah, we were on the team too.
Yeah, Marco's cool.
I embarrassed the crap out of him at the stupid end thing where everyone shows their games, because I'm like, everyone, Marco here is like 14 years old, and he's like, gosh dang.
Yeah, Canal does that too. He hates it.
Yeah. You can't do that anymore, because like I think it
now he's 19.
Yeah, that's weird. Anyway, I would have been really embarrassed at that time. Anyway,
but he had chops right off the bat, man.
Yeah,
he could really do some game dev.
Yeah.
All right, Jay. That's all the time we got, I guess, for the interview. Thanks so much for taking some time out of your vacation here in Florida to come and.
Yeah, it was fun. It was cool to see this. It was cool to see this facility too.
Okay. So, let's get into the news. This week, Chad, you're going to start this one. You've got something special.
Yeah, I actually would like to talk about influence of Extra Life. My studio, Continuum Studio, participated in this year's Extra Life campaign through Twitch. It happened at about the beginning of last month, and we raised over $600 for the Arnold Palmer Hospital here in Florida.
Good.
It was super enjoyable.
contributed a lot of online and offline donations and influence in Twitch and that type of thing. So I encourage anyone listening to check it out. It's a good donation to go through. They do it literally 365 days a year. They just focus on one day to raise as much money via playing games.
What games did you play?
Josh played a variety of things. I wasn't fully in contact. We played a lot of like retro stuff.
Cool. We also had our first ever IndieNomicon pub crawl this month.
Yes, we did. We went to the Smooch, the Hooch. The Hooch. We went to the Sideshow, and we went to the Kelton Harp, and then we ended the evening at Joysticks, which is a video game bar down here in Orlando.
Yeah. So Hooch had some very delicious apple pie shots. I remember that. And the Kelton Harp is one of our Orlando Game Space hangouts that we frequent. So we had to go there.
Totally recommend the Reuben. And then we just finished the Indie Bash, which is our holiday Christmas party. We had it here at the Orlando Game Space. It was carnival themed.
It's a carnival this year.
Yeah. We had
so much popcorn left over.
Yeah, popcorn, and so much popcorn unpopped. We had 5 or 6 different carnival games. We had dunk tank, we had pie throwing, food trucks by the Big Cheese, and we had caricatures by the Art of Sabian. He's done work for Marvel and Disney, so it's cool to have a very wide spectrum of events.
Yeah, it's a great time for me to be sick, and I'm still recovering.
We gave out for those who came, we gave out our VIP Patreon members their Christmas gift.
Yep, special Christmas presents.
Yep.
We had a raffle. We gave away some Indie boxes from our good friends at the Indie Box. If you guys haven't checked out the Indie Box and you like that box feel of a game when you open it that we used to get when we were buying them at the store. IndieBox does all that. That is their jam, and they were kind enough to donate some Indie boxes for us to give away to our supporters.
So thank you, James and team, for contributing and helping local community here.
So now we're both excited about this next one.
Oh, yeah.
Star Wars.
That's right. It's only 10 days away.
Yeah.
10 days away. Star Wars, December 15th. I will be in Indiana. You will be here.
I'll be here. I got several people that are already like, we're seeing it that night. I'm like, okay.
Thursday night. Yep. Last movie that just came out was, technically it was one of the last two because they were just about a week apart from each other, was Thor Ragnarok.
Yes, which I saw and will be reviewing.
And the other one was on the flip side would be Justice League.
Yes, which I didn't see. I wanted to see, but I heard it was bad.
It's just different approaches, I guess. So those are the big 3 movies, action movies at least, coming out this month. When we flip side, let's talk about television. We got 2 sci-fi shows.
2 sci-fi shows is very interesting. So we got Star Trek Discovery.
Yep.
And the Orville. So I did not expect the Orville to be good in any way, but people are saying actually. So I haven't watched Star Trek Discovery, but they're saying it's very much like the movies, kind of action driven, but doesn't have that classic Star Trek feel. The Orville does. And really hits on some like heavy issues, so if you haven't checked that out, I recommend it. I haven't seen Star Trek Discovery. If you're a hardcore Star Trek fan, you should probably check that out. But that is also out on Netflix.
Sweet. And we had 2 games that are worth recognizing outside of what we're going to review.
Yeah.
We got Lord of the Rings: Shadows of War.
Yep.
Which is the second in its franchise. Recommended.
Mm-hmm.
They overhauled the Nemesis system,
which was great in the first one. I'm looking forward to playing it, but I haven't played it yet.
Yep. And then the infamous South Park.
Yes, which we are going to review.
Yep. They actually had 2 games.
All right.
Yep. Which is on my phone.
You have Phone Destroyer.
I have Phone Destroyer, which is super fun. But I recommend checking both of those products out, whether you got your phone or whether you're just more of a console player. So those are your news, and we'll see you soon.
All right, guys. So we've got some reviews. We had a lot of games coming out this month. Christmas is coming up. There's one I've been really excited about. South Park: The Fractured But Whole. A good friend of mine actually was a level designer on this project. So we've got, so I've been pretty excited about it. Overall, great game. Hilarious. They've got some really good boss fights with some mechanics that switch things up. The new tactical combat's really good. Professor Chaos, Morgan Freeman, it's all great. My favorite classes were the Elementalist, Blaster, and Assassin. But overall, I really enjoyed the game. Combat feels good. It's very funny. Classic South Park at its best. A good follow-up to Stick of Truth. I also finally got around to playing Zelda Breath of the Wild. And this one is great, of course. Everybody knows it's great because it's been out there for a while. So while I do think this is a really good Zelda, everybody's been saying it's like the second coming. I may not say it's the second coming. It's probably my second favorite Zelda, or maybe my third. The new open world, like, it's a complete 180, and I just want to say hands up to Nintendo for trying something so experimental. Like, they became so formulaic with Skyward Sword. They did a complete 180, and it really feels fresh. A couple things that made me sad were the fact that the dungeons feel smaller, because I always loved the dungeons, and the boss battles, they don't feel as iconic as they used to. The music doesn't feel as iconic either. I may feel like I'm nitpicking, but honestly, it's very fresh. They got a lot of your Zelda staples in there. You'll find them. Overall, standout product. Really good game. Alright, next up, I saw Thor Ragnarok, the next Marvel franchise. It was different than what I was expecting. The previous Thors have been a little too serious. This one was very, very whimsical, very comical, very upbeat. They were a little too comical in some of the slow moments, but overall, pretty good ride. I also bought a Switch, so I wanted to do a quick review of that. So I think on this one, Nintendo really knocked it out of the park. The Switch is a great portable console and a great home console. I've tried out as many of their features as I can. It's great on the go, it's great in your house. That's really all we need to say about it. It's no Wii U.
And the last one up to talk about for reviews is I have been playing hours and hours of Assassin's Creed Origins. I know that we had talked about it last podcast, that I was looking forward to it, and it has surpassed my expectations. The only one department that it really could have been improved was actually the core of the story, unless there's some things that I have not seen yet. That's where I feel it could have been improved. But overall, looking at the mechanics and the gameplay, far superior than any other prior Assassin's Creed. You can see the mechanics taken from like The Division and Ghost Recon, and how they've been able to share those resources and how they've been able to adapt them. You know, the Eagle is creating, that's where they get the quote-unquote evil vision, as this is the Origins. So you can sense on where you're going. There's no, like, clear, translucent tracking system, right? And so as you switch to the bird, you can go around and you can actually get powers for the bird, and you can see through buildings, and that's where that physical power comes up. Tons of weapons, tons of gear content. Some of the outfits are pretty unique. You can actually, if you're a Ubisoft Club member, you can actually wear Altair's and Ezio's armor for free. So that was pretty cool. And being able to facilitate from there. You do actually play a human character as well, but I won't ruin that. They do apply a very old school, like Desmond Miles approach to the story, which was not something told through any of the promotional materials. It was definitely focused on Bayek and his story about his son. So,
how'd you feel about ancient Egypt?
Dude, the whole world was phenomenal. And there's still areas that are still dark.
There you go.
And then one of the cool things that I really enjoyed about the game was when you're traveling by horseback and you're in the sand dunes, you start to see stuff and it makes things mirageable appear. Like, I've seen fish fall from the sky. I've seen people show up in the middle of the sand and like disapparate, and I've seen different stuff show up, and then when I like go over to them, there's a snake and it starts to attack me or whatever. It really plays into that whole immersive factor of what happens when you're in the middle. And the sand storms are pretty cool. I took some cool pictures of chasing a sandstorm.
Yeah.
And it totally can't see anything, but 10 feet in front of you, you could be traveling right next to a city and you can't even see it. It's so in depth.
Zelda's got a bunch of cool stuff like that too. It's funny you mentioned the Ezio and Altair costumes. I also got an Ezio costume in South Park.
Oh, sweet.
So, all right, gang. So we're going to talk about our indie game of the month. Remember, always support your indies. So, I wanted to talk about Battle Chasers this month. This game, this IP has an interesting history because Battle Chasers was originally an early 2000s comic that was made by Joe Mad, and I believe McFarlane was one of the lead artists. And it ran for about 9 issues before it got canceled. It was published by Wildstorm and Cliffhanger. And that was a studio that was going through some weird stuff, and the studio fell apart eventually, but they had trouble pushing comics out. But it had a really core following. So in this day and age, people came back, they created a Kickstarter for it, and our indie studio Airship Syndicate came and they made this RPG comic that was based on an RPG game idea into an RPG game. So it's traditional turn-based RPG, very old school, great art style, and it's just kind of cool that it's come around full circle and it's returned.
And you bring up art style, just so everyone's clear. Joe Mad was the lead artist and directionable for Darksiders. So they understand the art style of Battle Chasers. Is if you love Darksiders, you're going to love the direction that Joe Mad took for Battle Chasers.
Yeah, the original comic. It's very similar. It's kind of funny because a lot of the new tropes that come out of this, actually, so like the idea of the tank being like a little person, like a little girl, they came up with that, and now everybody else was stealing it, even though it was this comic that only ran for like 9 issues. It has a big core following, though. So, go and check it out. I thought it was pretty cool. I haven't purchased it yet, but it is on my list.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Player versus Player. Standing out of the blue corner, Anthony Bagsby. And standing out of the red corner is Chad Hoover. Welcome to Battle Star Wars.
You guessed it, guys. We're going to talk about some Star Wars.
Woo!
Just because we're so excited about the new movie. They also had a recent game come out. So.
That's right. Star Wars Battlefront.
Yep.
Check it out. No matter what negativity you hear about in the press, go check it out. It's a fun game. But, so, let's talk about Star Wars.
Okay.
Let's talk about, I think the big ones, let's talk about timelines.
Yes.
Let's talk about old movies, middle movies, and then we have all of this current stuff that they're working on.
So, by old movies, you mean the original movies?
The original. So we're talking 4, 5, and 6. So, which of those 3 is your favorite?
I always pick Jedi.
Jedi? Well, why you choose Jedi?
I think it was just when I saw it. It was actually my first Star Wars that I saw.
Okay.
I was like 8, and it was on TV, like Thanksgiving, and we watched it. And I had no idea what I was watching. It wasn't until I went back later and I watched 4, 5, and then 6 that I was like, oh, I've already seen this.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's kind of a nice wrap up. I like the rescue of Han Solo. I mean, the beginning part it's still the best part of the movie to me. But, where they go in and they rescue Han Solo. What about you?
My favorite would probably be Empire Strikes Back.
Yes.
One of the reasons why I enjoy it, now looking back in my age, it has one of the most character development of characters. You have the love-hate relationship between Leia and Solo, right? You have Luke finding his direction and what he needs to do, right? Those are the real core two elements of piece of how that basic character arc goes.
Yeah.
And that's why I feel so enthralled with watching Empire Strikes Back.
It's also much darker
It is.
than any of the other movies. So it's got a good feel to it.
So what? Okay, so then we have the middle 2000s, right?
Yes,
so
the
this is
prequels.
This is George Lucas feeling creative and wanting to tell the pre-story before the creation of Darth Vader. So now we have Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones,
Yep.
and Return of the Jedi.
Those were movies that were made.
Yeah. So, which one's your favorite?
I think my favorite is actually Phantom Menace.
Okay, why is that?
You got Liam Neeson.
True.
bringing his A game.
Yeah.
You got Darth Maul.
Oh, hands down.
Easily the coolest villain of those three.
Amen.
Movies.
I hope he comes back in this new.
Maybe he made it into the Clone Wars after he died.
That's
the
right.
Cartoon.
He's never he comes back.
So Darth Maul was cool. Liam Neeson was cool, and I'm going to say it right now. The best part of those movies is watching Hayden Christensen play Obi-Wan Kenobi. Wait, is that the right actor?
No.
No, Hayden Christensen is Luke or Anakin.
That's right.
The guy who plays
Team.
Obi-Wan Kenobi is awesome. So that's also, that's just why that one's my favorite.
I really enjoyed the telling of Anakin's story in Return of the Sith.
Okay.
Or Revenge of the Sith, though, sorry. And you really got to see his transition as a character from his dilemma and his fight in early story, in the early movie, and then once he's starting to establish his character, his fight with himself and Padme and Obi-Wan Kenobi and trying to choose the right path and then aligning himself with the Senator.
Ewan McGregor. That was Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Ewan McGregor. So that was one of the things that I particularly cared for, and really that selling point of when I just think of that scene of when they're on that planet at the very end. It's like, you don't trust me, Anakin. You're no longer.
That one is actually my least favorite of all the Star Wars movies.
But I do feel a loss in my heart because pod racing was only in episode 1, and it's one of my favorite games ever put out by Star Wars, and that is the only time we ever get to watch it. So it will always have a place in my heart. So now we are in the present day.
Yes.
We are now 30 years later, and the most critical piece is that nothing of the lore that makes sense
the extended universe.
In the extended universe or in what George made for the books, right, has no correlation
All gone.
to what... I mean, it could be subtle pieces, but it's all, like I said, it's
They
all
also
gone.
removed everything that had to do with the Force the video game series with Star Killer.
Yes.
They removed all that. That's all gone, non-canon.
All of it. I mean, if they play reference to it, that's just purely based on speculation.
Yeah. So they've blown all that away, and they're doing their new stuff. Everything with Force Awakens and Rogue One, and then the upcoming Last Jedi, which obviously we haven't seen. What did you think of Force Awakens? Because this has been very polarizing from what I've heard.
I just recently watched it this morning.
Yeah.
And, I have some negativities about it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you have to be open. There's a lot of unanswered questions and a lot of, why did you do it that way? But, we're also starting a new trilogy that what our parents saw back in the 70s, right? When you saw 4, what kind of questions did they have?
Yeah, of course they're going to leave questions unanswered.
You know what I
They want
mean?
us to see the rest of the movies.
That's my point. Like,
Yeah.
We look at 7 and we put it on a pedestal, right? Because we've seen 1, 2, all the way up to 6, right? And so now we have 7 and we start this 30 years later, right? Totally new characters. Sure, Han's in the movie, Leia's in the movie, Luke's in the movie, right? We got 2 major roles and one, barely played a cameo, right?
Yeah, Luke.
Yeah, but still at the same time, we had to connect ourselves with 3 brand new characters.
Yep.
Right? And we still don't know what and how they interact with each other.
Right.
Right? We still don't know who Rey's parents are.
I have my theory.
Right? Sure, if you can watch that scene with the lightsaber many times, and I have a philosophy as well. We don't know where Finn, where he comes from. I have a philosophy on that.
I love some of the fan theories on that.
Right?
I don't think they're true, but...
If you read the comic book, I think he's related to Han.
Okay.
Because in the comic book, there is a particular scene where Han is fighting with Leia, and he doesn't have the Millennium Falcon. The Millennium Falcon shows up, and this African-American lady comes out, and she's actually Han's first wife.
Okay. So I'm going to say the fan theory just because it's hilarious. A lot of people are like, he's Mace Windu's son.
I never considered that. I think Mace
One
Windu
of the
is...
people pushing that fan theory, by the way, is Samuel L. Jackson.
I think Snoke is Samuel L. Jackson's character.
Yeah, that's another theory I've heard, Mace Windu.
Rey's parents, I think at least his father is actually Obi-Wan Kenobi.
I think that's what I think.
Because if you go back and listen to that scene when she picks up a lightsaber at Luke's,
well,
if
it
there's
probably can't be his. She probably can't be her father because she's not old enough. But grandfather. That's what I think.
But I'm just to a point. I mean, I guess there's to a point, but who's then? We don't know if he had kids.
That's true. We don't.
They said through interviews when you watch the movie, you should know who it is.
Okay.
And I was like,
I feel like it's Obi-Wan Kenobi or Obi-Wan Kenobi's the grandfather.
Yeah, I think Obi-Wan has a strong connection to the reason of Leia. But I mean, a lot of it's going to hearsay. The big thing that I want to know your input as we wrap up Battle Star Wars is this. Is Han Solo dead?
Oh, he's very dead. But
What makes you believe he's dead?
he got stabbed through the heart and thrown into a pit.
I watched it today. It doesn't show you where he got stabbed.
Okay. I do know that he has been cast for Episode 8. So
Okay.
he's in there somewhere. Is he a Force ghost? I don't know. He's not a Jedi, so probably not.
I believe, this is my fan theory, I don't know if anybody else in this world shares it with me. So, if you talk about how Episode 7 was filmed, okay, there were things about Episode 7 that played into 4, 5, and 6.
Right.
Right? Like, when the Millennium Falcon was captured by the Rillian freighter, right? It was just like the carrier capturing it originally, right? There was just certain camera placements and the way that he filmed that movie. I believe that Luke actually sensed trouble and was able to come back and save Han after he falls, right? Takes him back. And so when Rey gets to that planet, that's where Han is at as well.
Yeah, it'd be cool. I'd love to see Han Solo still in the movie. Like I said, I know they cast Harrison Ford in there somewhere, so he's doing something.
Yeah. So, I don't think he's dead, and I'll support it all day long. because I don't want him to be dead.
I don't want him to be dead either.
I about cried.
Um,
Any last things coming up to Return?
Briefly, we should talk about Rogue One. I actually watched that over Thanksgiving break. That is, a lot of people were disappointed. I think they didn't expect everybody to die. I expected everybody to die.
Actually, there is this thing that there might bring back those two characters.
The two main characters?
Yep.
I don't care about them. I want to see K2SO come back. Best robot.
Oh, of course, he's on the cover of the DVD.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's speculation that they're going to bring back those two characters in some way, shape, or form. How they live through that explosion is beyond me. But
they are the only ones we didn't see die.
Correct. You just saw the big fire of like coming at you explosively. I will say that
K2SO was a robot though. They could have backed him up. Same
right.
point.
No. What was I going to say? Oh no, I really liked how they filmed it differently.
Yes.
Like, it wasn't like a normal Star Wars. It felt like a normal film. And where people, when they first watch it, they expected the scroll of Star Wars and stuff like that, and they got nothing of any of all that. Mm-hmm. And so, as criticism it may be, I think that was a good direction because
it was wise.
Because it's a storytelling. It's the same thing like when we get Han Solo's story and we get Obi-Wan Kenobi's story.
Looking forward to that.
Right? That's the same thing. Like it needs to be a subset. Shouldn't be.
They're one shots.
Yeah, exactly. So, any final thoughts on Battlestar Wars?
Nope. I think we are good to go.
Good. Go see the movie.
Yes.
The Return of the Jedi, the Last Jedi.
Join me.
December 15th.
December 15th, Thursday night.
Go watch it. What's going on, guys? Welcome back. We're going to talk. This is our Dev Series segment. And today, Tony and I are going to be discussing pros and cons, goods and bads, and talking about game design tutorials of games that you're making. What are some good approaches, that type of thing? What are some good examples to base reference off of? And I'll let Tony start this.
So I actually came up with this idea because I was playing Breath of the Wild.
Mm-hmm.
And as we know, Breath of the Wild is very hands-off. And that was because they were trying to recreate kind of the 8-bit era of the 8-bit original Zelda, where you just basically showed up outside of a cave and got your sword, and that was the tutorial, right? There are tutorials in that game, but they're very subtle. It's very hands-off, but the game does continually teach you throughout the game. This is to combat, the current era of hands-on tutorials, right? People are always saying that they're being beaten over the head with a stick on how to play their game.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is a very good reference to another game that does tutorials in a very similar way. A game that we probably all played, Portal. Portal is actually 80% tutorial. You're playing for about almost 2 hours before you get out of the tutorial, but it is so subtle with its tutorials, and it's so selective that you don't even realize you're in a tutorial. Because it's like, hey, we're going to introduce a new mechanic. Really quickly, here's how it goes. And then here's a bunch of puzzles to try it out. Zelda's kind of the same way, where it introduces a new idea, and then just lets you play with it for hours before it introduces another idea.
Mm-hmm. One game that, in my arsenal of experience with strong tutorials that are very immersive, and that is Mega Man X.
Okay.
Everyone, as probably a lot of our listeners have seen the classic video of that Ego Raptor doing the Mega Man X tutorial. If you've never seen it, I recommend it because it'll blow your mind.
I believe it's not on the Game Grumps channel, but Sequelitis, that's it.
You can do that. You can probably find it on Newgrounds too.
Yeah.
That's where originally all that got started. But as a developer, for me, I concur with what all these people are doing because, you can play games like Call of Duty and Battlefield and like all of these other games that feel like exactly what you feel. Beaten over the head. Mm-hmm. Do it this way. Following
the game design from point to point to point to point.
Yeah, And so they do their best to like cover it with story and make it so like not so enthralled. But there are games that can do it very respectably, very well.
And so a really key point in successful game design is allowing your players to feel mastery, right? And so I think that's what a lot of these games, and Mega Man X is the same way, where they introduce a new mechanic and they just let you go with it.
Mm-hmm.
And they let you attain that mastery yourself through experience, through trial and error. Because that feels so much more rewarding than the game telling you how to do it. When you figure things out on your own, you're like, oh, I get it.
Yeah, it's more immersive that way. It doesn't feel so cumbersome, right? It's like, that was one of the things where I enjoy playing my fair share of Final Fantasy, just like anybody else does. But I have to gripe on this because it still doesn't haunt me to this day, but it still doesn't make me very happy about Final Fantasy 13.
Yeah.
That is a 30-hour tutorial of hands-on. Like, literally, you can't change your teams. You're literally going through a force-fed story. Not until you get open world does it be like, now you can create your own teams. I'm like, why couldn't I do that from the get-go?
20 hours into the game.
Like, you know, we can go back to, we were talking about Assassin's Creed earlier today, you know, and I can bring up Assassin's Creed 3, right? And the early game, Assassin's Creed 3, you played as what you felt was the main character, and then found out that it's not the main character, and then the story changes, and then you play as this little kid, and you found out that you are the main character now, but you aren't who you believe you are to be, and you gotta learn this in a very story-driven aspect. Climb trees and hunt this, and hide from this, and do these types of things to get that basic mechanic. We've all played 4 Assassin's Creed games. Yeah. We know how to climb trees. We know how to do all this stuff.
We know how to social stealth.
Right? It's almost like, we talked about Spider-Man before. We don't need the story of Spider-Man. We know the story of Spider-Man.
Don't need to see Bruce Wayne's parents die again.
Yeah. So that's the same thing. It's, when you make an intellectual property that has multiple iterations, you shouldn't feel like you have to retell the player the same thing.
Right.
It's like watching Marvel movies now, right? Yeah. They do an amazing job, and they don't assume. They just assume that you know things. Like you're going to watch it. It's a thing.
Zelda's the same way. Like this time around, they don't tell you how your sword works. They don't even give you a sword. You get a pair of pants and a shirt, and you are out the door. And yeah, there's like, so if you've seen any of the stuff, you start out on a plateau, and you can't leave it until you do a certain amount of things.
Mm-hmm.
But you're not led by the nose. It's just kind of like you walk out, and you could completely ignore the guy that gives you the quest to leave the plateau and just go and screw around for as long as you want. Then even after you run into him, he's just like, oh yeah, do these things. And then I proceeded to run out and screw around for hours.
But that's the way that game is designed to develop. I'm totally expecting the same direct approach for Red Dead Redemption. Yeah. It had a very cookie cutter tutorial in the first game, but because it is a very Grand Theft Auto-y type thing, you gotta do a story element. Oh man, my cows have escaped. We need to wrangle them up. And so now you're learning how to do that. Now, the expectation is do you retell that piece and expect that people have played the first game, and do you just kind of intuitively teach the new mechanics, or is it the mechanics changed? Like, is it stronger? Is it better? We know that when we compare Grand Theft Auto 4 to Grand Theft Auto 5, mechanics are completely.
The key is a light touch.
Mm-hmm.
Guide your players to the solutions just lightly. You don't need to have a point-and-click tutorial of, okay, now hold left trigger and move right stick to aim and press right trigger to... We don't need to know that that's to shoot a gun, guys. We've played how many first-person shooters?
Yeah, exactly. And so, that's just are some of our, input on tutorials. And so when you guys are making your tutorials for your games, think of your end user. Think of what they're going to want, and the expectation of your game. And we can't harp on this enough, but if you have trouble, get people to play your game. Right. And record them playing your game and ask them questions, because getting that heuristic feedback is impossible.
Right. If people aren't getting the core mechanics of your game, obviously, you need to work in a way for them to get introduced to that mechanic in a natural way.
Yep.
All right, guys, so it's time to go old school. We're going to talk a little bit of nostalgia here. And this month's topic is 8-bit music. We all have our favorites. I'm actually going to go with Sonic 3 for some of my favorite. The soundtracks were actually co-created by Michael Jackson, which I always thought was cool. Of course, I didn't find that out for years later. But, Chad, what's some of your favorites?
Two of them that come to mind as playing as a young kid was Excitebike.
Okay.
And DuckTales.
Oh, yeah, that was a good one. I also want to put Mega Man in there. I was going to leave that one for you to take, though.
Yeah, no, it's classic. Make this section of the podcast go for hours, and we can talk about how, from going from the Atari and what little is available into that, and then coming into 8-bit, what people can do with 8-bit now is just beyond crazy. But when you think about what physically the hardware can do, you have games like the Batman the game. Okay, they created the theme music from the movie as close as they could, utilizing the 8-bit chiptune for the game. I'm just to your point. Like when you go back and listen to it, I mean, it sounds like that original theme music. Yeah. You have games like Ridge Racer, and you have games like Outrun, right? That utilize and push the boundaries.
Honestly, I think the limitations were part of what made them so great in the first place. They had so little to work with. But that really, simple melody, and Mega Man is especially, really good at this, hitting those, memorable tunes. There's, still, it's, ingrained in my brain just from...
I mean, that's what we were raised with. You have the big three, You have Mario, right? You have Legend of Zelda, and you have Punch-Out, right? When you think of classic themes, right? When you hear it, it's just I know exactly what that is. It brings back feeling. It brings back emotion. It's simple. It's not complex, right? It's catchy. You can tap your toe to it. It really sets it apart from things that we get now. I'm not saying that music that we get now is not good, right?
I mean, now we can do full orchestras. Games are making enough money that the AAA titles at least can do full orchestral tracks, and that's great. But it's still kind of nice to remember your roots, I guess.
Yeah, I mean that's why we have this segment on the podcast, because it allows us to kind of talk and go back to what makes games now so important.
Well, I definitely see influence from that in some, especially the indie games that are coming out that are successful. So we have Bastion, known for its great music, but its tracks are very based on that kind of simple melody mindset. And then its follow-up, Transistor, is the same. A game that I will tote endlessly is Shovel Knight. Mm-hmm. Straight up 8-bit.
Oh yeah, totally.
Music still very 8-bit. I think they have a couple more bits in a couple of bit more notes in there than true Eight-Bit, but it hits that nostalgic 8-bit.
It has that feeling, whether you take the 8-bit or you take the 16-bit. I mean, it's still at the same time. Yeah. When you even briefly, I'll just jump. But they say when you compare 8-bit to 16, and you go in like the Super Nintendo, right? Even like that is even closer to more improved since you have more notes, But it's still at that same time, it's still that throwback,
Yeah.
for what it allows the listener to hear.
And I think that's one of the reasons Sonic Generations was so successful, because all the tracks were trying to replicate and bring the original tracks to a new era, but they were still based on those original roots. And I think that's part of why Sonic Forces is not doing as well as we had hoped, because they didn't try and bring it back to any of the roots. They just kind of went and did their own thing.
Mm-hmm.
And Sonic Mania again was very successful.
Because it has a following,
Yeah.
and if you can do it well enough, it will save your game. People for a long time said that music in games is not that important, but just like in film and television, we are coming around, and we're no longer in age compared to all these bigger pieces, but audio tells a feeling, and it senses the mood. And if you don't send it, there's a level of disconnect.
Right.
And if you don't take the time to make the proper audio, so shout out to all you audio peeps out there.
Yeah.
Keep doing what you're doing. It's a very influential piece.
Yeah, even in the AAA titles, like, the audio will bring you in. I know when I played Arkham City,
Mm-hmm.
there's a moment late in the game, shit's hitting the fan, the soundtrack is like perfect, and it really kind of brings you into this moment of like, I actually felt like I was in the middle of Batman The Dark Knight, because like, it's just they hit that note, and music has a trigger in your brain, and it just kind of hits you and puts you in that moment.
Yeah, it makes you enthralled, makes you focus.
So,
Like I said, if it's Arkham City, big ones at the end. I mean, for me, transitioning to talking about like other themes and audios and games, you bring up City. The biggest scene for me was the audio cue when you find the twist in the story. And that scene happens, and the person you expect that you're going to be talking to is completely somebody else, and you're just like, your mind is just blown, and you're like, what just happened the past 20 hours? Like,
it happens like 3 times in that game.
yeah, but the first time,
Arkham City was Hugo Strange,
okay,
Ra's al Ghul, and the Joker's still doing his thing.
Yeah.
And there was a secret final villain that nobody knew about until the final boss, but that was working with the Joker.
So as we're talking about Batman, we'll kind of wrangle it back down.
We were talking about music. We got a little sidetracked by Batman. It happens.
So we're gonna bring it back for a second, and just so throwing it back, 8-bit for Tony and I. There's a very classic nature, and a lot of, since this is a few podcasts in, and we've been kind of
That's where we got started.
focused on the nostalgia factor. And I said, music's big for both of us, and it's big for what we both do.
Yeah. It can definitely have a factor, but and that's where nostalgia comes from, right?
It's a hindsight, but music is important in the games that you make. Take your time, and don't make it last to the very end, because it's important. So
But don't make it last to work on.
exactly.
Yeah.
Start early. It helps the feels. So thanks everyone for listening into the podcast. We appreciate you stopping by and listening to us ramble and talk about our opinions and our feelings. So,
Next time, I'm Tony.
and I'm Chad. This has been the Replaycast.